Hi, I'm RJ Baxter, owner of ClearPath Home Loans, and I'm going to talk today a little bit about the 2-1 buy down, which is also called the temporary buy down. So let's get right into it. This is a really super common program that we're using right now. It's January of 2024 as I'm recording this. And the reason why people are using this buy down program is because they want to get a lower interest rate in payment. With interest rates elevated right now, everyone is doing everything they can to get that interest rate down. So, first of all, just generally speaking, what a buy down is, it's paying more money up front in the form of closing costs in an effort to get a lower interest rate. So, more upfront cost for lower interest over time. And a 2-1 buy down is also called a temporary buy down because it's not permanent. It's not a buy down where you get the rate permanently lower, which is the traditional type of buy down that you might have heard of, where you pay points at closing and you obtain then a lower interest rate permanently on the loan. So 1 point being 1% of the loan amount, use that point to then get a lower interest rate. Now, I'm not a big fan of that because I think it's likely rates are probably going to go down over the next year or two. No one has a crystal ball, but rates are up right now in early 2024. So let's talk about why this temporary buy down is so powerful. So first of all, the 2-1 buy down in a basic way is called a 2-1 buy down because the first year your interest rate is 2% lower. The second year your rate is 1% lower. And then the third year moving forward, you have the full rate, or what we call the note rate. So the idea is, and the goal would be that you refinance the loan before you even get to that third year, and then you can lock in a permanently lower interest rate. Here's an example. Let's say the full note rate is 6.5%. That means the first year your rate's going to be 4.5%. I mean, you cannot find that anywhere. So it's really nice to be able to get that rate so low the first year. The second year, 5.5%, and then the third year moving forward, the rate would go to the full 6.5%. This can be applied to the three most common loan types: a conventional loan, an FHA loan, or a VA loan. And it's kind of like, it's not a specific, the 2-1 buy down is not a specific loan product. It's more of a feature of the loan that you're obtaining. So there's also a couple other versions of this. There's the 1-0 buy down where the rate is 1% lower the first year and then the full rate the second year. And then the 3-2-1 buy down where the rate is a full 3% lower the first year. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about those two here in a sec. So let's look at an example. Here's that 6.5% interest rate I was mentioning on the last slide. And you'll see this is a $500,000 home price with a 5% down payment and a $475,000 loan amount. So in the first year, the interest rate's 4.5%, and you'll see here the payments almost $600 a month lower than it will be the third year. The second year, the rate's 5.5%, and your payment's about $300 lower. So super, super powerful how this can affect your cash flow the first couple of years and really help you to get used to that higher payment and hopefully, like I said, lock in that lower rate permanently before you get to the 6.5. Now, here's what it costs. This is really important. So basically, we look at the year one savings, $595 a month, or a total of $71.46, and the year two savings, $305 a month, or a total of $36.63, is a total of $10,810. That's the cost of the buy down. Why is that the cost? It's because essentially that $10,810 goes into an offset account. Basically, it's a supplemental account that makes up the difference between the payment you would have at 6.5% and that lower payment at 4.5%. Because remember, your note rate is still 6.5%. That means your mortgage is still 6.5%. So this 10,810 supplements those payments to make them lower the first 2 years. Now, here's a really great feature about the 2-1 buy down. If you do refinance successfully within that first 2 years, and there's any money left over in this offset account, that gets applied to a principal payment on your mortgage. So in other words, let's say you go to refinance and you owe $470,000 on this $475,000 loan. That's what's remaining, and you have $3,000 left in this offset account. That means that you would have to only pay off $467,000 on the loan. So a really neat feature of this that money doesn't just go away to never be used. So very important to note that. So here's basically how it works. So the seller has to pay for this buy down. So this can be tricky depending on what the market's like. In the market that we've had the past couple of years, where houses are sitting a little bit longer, there's not as much activity. Sellers are more willing to talk and negotiate. Now, if you go back more than 2 years ago, when the market was super hot and houses were selling in 1 or 2 days without even people looking at it, the seller may not be as willing to negotiate. So it's really important, depending on the market. So talk to your real estate agent to know going into making your offer if this type of thing is something that might be the seller might be willing to talk about. Also, just a particular listing, no matter what the market is, if it's been sitting on the market for a little bit, the seller might be more willing to talk. So this has to be negotiated into the price. This is very important to understand. So let's say on that $500,000 house, like I was showing you, $10,800 is the cost. So that means the seller is only going to net $489,200. $500,000 minus the cost that they're paying for is $489,200. So that means the seller would have to be open to accepting $489,200, or you may have to offer higher in order to get that house. So you might have to offer $510,000, let's say, in order to win that offer and get that house. So the seller still gets their $500,000. How do you qualify for this 2-1 buy down? Basically, the way it works is in order to qualify, you just have to qualify for the primary loan, the conventional FHA or VA loan. It's important to know, though, you qualify on the full interest rate, so the 6.5% rate in our example, not on that introductory 4.5% rate. Now, a good skilled lender is going to look at that, and they're going to make sure that they're qualifying you on that 6.5% rate versus the lower rate. So that's a really important thing to look at. So how do you get the 2-1 buy down? There's a couple steps you need to take to get this 2-1 buy down. The first one is call or email me, and we can set up a time, or we can, when you call in, if I'm available, I'll pick up and we can chat. It doesn't cost a penny to call, or shoot me an email and we can set something up and we'll talk about it. I will put together your custom numbers for your particular situation so you can look at what this 2-1 buy down is going to look like. The next step after that is you get pre-approved and you go shopping. Now, I offer free pre-approvals. I don't charge a dime to do the pre-approval for you. I will help you to navigate the qualifying factors and make that process very, very easy for you and straightforward. So give me a call or email. I'd be happy to talk to you, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks a lot.